Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this in-depth ag forecast for Australia. All right, I just need to be fully transparent before we even get started today. Predictability right now is very low. All right, there are just time periods throughout the year. They're usually during our transition seasons, which of course we are in right now, where the signals kind of get, they get mixed up. A lot of times they're constructive, they add together, we get really good at our jobs, but most of the time the atmosphere is out there to make us look like idiots, and here we are. The reason I say that is because I understand that right now is a critical time period in terms of weather forecasting for all of you. So I'm going to show you a couple of things I'm working on, right? I do have a subseasonal forecast I'm going to share with you in a few moments, but I need you to understand how badly it did in March. And then I'm going to show you some new tools I'm working on so that you have better access to weather information going forward, right? And when I get those finished, I will blast them out through Nutrien so that you all have access to this stuff. But you've been staring at a map that shows you March, and you say, well, how well did you do predicting March? Well, to be honest with you, the early March forecast looked nothing like this. What are we talking about? Well, we had a large tropical system that was early in the month. That was in the forecast. But all of this flooding into this area, heavy rains in this area, versus the extremely dry conditions down in parts of New South Wales, Tasmania, then of course right here along the coast, and then interior sections of Western Australia. This was very poorly forecast by the models. Let me show what I mean. At the beginning of March, this is what was released. This is our highest statistically performing weather forecast model on the seasonal timescale. And on March the 1st, okay, yeah, it nailed this. Why? Because that was when the hurricane was here. We knew this. That tropical cyclone was in place. But this is what the prediction was. And just as a reminder, this is where we got. Now, you might be asking, like, what was the failure mode with all of this? And we're going to address that in a few moments, but I want to show you where we currently stand on things. Some satellite estimates of root zone soil moisture show these very dry regions out pretty clearly. And we have some key agricultural areas in here that need this moisture. But instead it's been given to huge areas to our north and parts of Queensland, northern sections of New South Wales, and into the interior. And we're questioning whether or not we're going to return this moisture to these growing areas as we go forward. This is going to be critical for your planting. This is going to be critical for so many different things in the coming weeks and months. So I want to show you what happened. No model predicted this. Now, what's the color range on this? This is how the atmosphere breathes. Okay, rising air, cooling condensation clouds, precipitation, right? That's what you see in these colors. This represents suppression, air sinking, clear skies, light winds. And we saw a lot of that here in this part of South America where we had drought built in. We have major drought in Mexico right now. We saw drought in the southwestern United States. We saw very dry conditions in the interior of India. We saw dry conditions across parts of Africa, but all the rising motion was here. And what that was doing was that was basically just tossing, just opening up tropical moisture to come into this area multiple times. And no forecast model nailed this. That is an MJO phase 4-5, like almost permanence. And that's where it was. And the models whiffed, major whiff on this. So what that ended up doing was producing high pressure to our south, right down here. And what was critical about the way that high pressure cell was working was that the flow came around it like this, which is what helps to steer the tropical system right along the coast. But it was parts of New South Wales was too close to this, Tasmania too close to this high pressure to kind of get away from the drying effects. I'm talking about here and here. And so what was missed was the position of these things. Let me show you this, okay? If you just go back, let me go back. Let's go back here. I'm going to show you the forecast on pressure. This was the predicted pressure, in the month of March. That high pressure cell was predicted to be much farther to the south. It ended up being right into this area. And that's the whiff. That was what was missed with this forecast. So I show you all of that, and we come back to what I glimpsed at a moment ago. It's here. This is the new forecast for the month of April. And unfortunately, it continues to show drier conditions here, down into Victoria, even parts of Tasmania, right along this part of South Australia, and then stretching back into this region. It's keeping this area open for very wet conditions and also wetter pockets of Western Australia. And what's interesting about this forecast for the month of April is that it is being mimicked right now, for the most part, by the Bureau of Meteorology. Now, you'll notice some differences. They're wetter here. They've got near normal chances here for rainfall. The European model's drier, and they're much drier here, whereas the European model had wetter conditions in this little area that I highlighted. Now, we just need to look at the differences and assess them and try to understand them, but this is BOM's forecast, and this is the European model's forecast for the month of April. So we need to see how we're getting here and what's going on the models. And I'm going to start you off by just telling you something. If the models missed on the MJO position, remember last month it was heavily into this area. Let me show you what it's doing now. As you look at this particular animation, these colors represent where there is air rising, and these colors represent where it is exhausting. Where it is coming together. Coming together. So you need to think of this as where air is going down in the atmosphere, hence clear skies, light winds, no rainfall, and this is where it's going up. Now we know we have a deep low that's sitting just off our southeast coast as I'm speaking, and it's going to go over toward New Zealand here. But what I want you to watch is this. Over the next 15 days, we begin to lose this MJO signal, which was so dominant. When it's not for the next 60 hours, it's getting out there 5 days from now, maybe 7 to 10 days from now. And what we start to see as we get out farther into the forecast, we begin to see major suppression in the atmosphere here, all of the rising motion moving there, and we're caught in between. And what this is attempting to do in the forecast is it's attempting to paint a drier stripe right in through here, which we saw carried forward for the rest of the month of April. That MJO transition, I think, is most critical. I think it's more critical than what's going on with La Nina, the Indian Ocean Dipole, the Southern Annular Mode. I still think we're stuck in an MJO type setup. Now, with all of that kind of prefacing the near-term forecast, I'm going to show you where we are today. I mean, there it is. We've got this deep cyclone that's just off our southeast coast going toward, New Zealand. Nothing, thankfully, brewing to our north in terms of tropical activity. But as we look at the forecast going forward, the next 10 days, can you see it? There's this stripe right in through here that is drier, much wetter to the north. And we see down here wetter into parts of Western Australia. Now, this would be critical to get this rainfall in this area. And we're getting into some of the details of this in a moment. But I wanted you to see what these next 7 days could look like, because day 8 through 14 looks something like this. In other words, week 2, the 10th through the 16th of April. This is where I'm curious if the models have this right. I think this is all going to move farther over in this direction. And that could leave more of Australia onto a drier signal overall, if that's the case. This is the European model solution. You can see the deep low, the stalled out frontal boundary right in through here, bringing in the rainfall. This is the rest of the day getting into Thursday and Friday. So there's some of the rainfall we're going to watch late this week coming into parts of Western Australia. You continue to see the thunderstorms to the north. Much of the rest of the country is drier. As we play through Sunday and Monday, we seem to be caught between two wind systems. You're always caught between two wind systems, your westerlies and your easterlies. That's why the interior of Australia is what it is. It's a massive desert. And it's to understand that. It's because you are in the subtropical region. That is why your wettest places are here, and then up north. Okay, anyway, that's beyond this, okay? Where are we in time? This is Tuesday. Wednesday, there is another frontal boundary next Tuesday that sneaks right in through parts of Western Australia, bringing some rain as another deep low goes toward New Zealand. But as we play this forward, that front dies by the time it gets into South Australia. And that's why for most of the next 10 days, the model is just showing up with these drier conditions. Now, you're like, all right, that's the play-by-play. Show me everything. So we come over here to total precipitation. Now let's see how fast it loads. Look at that. Terrible internet connection, loading fast enough. So let's go ahead and add up the total amount of rainfall. Now remember, the numbers that I've overlaid on the graph are showing millimeters. So what I've got for the next 10 days is we may be able to pick up some places here, 12 to maybe upwards of 30 to 40 mils of rain. Across the north, very, very wet, but this stripe right through here continues to show dry. And the reason I'm concerned about that is where we started, right? This area had been drier, especially here and here. So we're just watching this to try to assess and understand kind of how that's going to play out overall. Now, from here, we can look at several other weather variables if you want and play around with these when I get this released to be able to see it. But I'd like to just flip over a discussion to temperatures really quickly. So I'm going to you can look if you want at the actual temperatures and you can play them out. But let's just look at anomalies. Let's kind of get, temperature anomalies. Let's kind of get an idea on what the temperatures are going to be. So we are cooler than average for a while right in through here. We are a bit drier over in, warmer over in Western Australia, warmer along the coast. That's the next 5 days. Day 5 through 10, still quite warm here, a little cooler into the interior, getting into parts of Queensland. But if we just look at the next 10 days on the whole, we're kind of just striping the country or striping Australia here and here versus warm and cool. So just a quick rundown of the temperatures. You know I don't tend to focus too much on your day-to-day weather in these videos. So as I look at all this, I want to remind you of one other thing. Winds. Now I'm going to be adding this into the website very soon. I did want to point out that over here in parts of Western Australia, we are expecting wind gusts later this week to be getting up into the 40 to 50 mile an hour range at times, but much of the rest of Australia has relatively calmer winds. All right, all of that, right? We just did a quick look at this. We need to come back to these bigger picture, longer term things. Now this is what I'm concerned about. As we go forward, we know that we have 2 deep lows just in the next week that are going to come through here. All right, but watch. This is the next week. As you get out there into week 2, okay, a little bit of lower pressure over in Western Australia, hence maybe the better chances for rain here. But the model is going after, through the rest of April and into early May, just subtropical high pressure dominance in this area. And as we keep playing it out into May, what we end up getting is the model hanging on to that for a while. Now, the point of me showing you that is if I just look at a 45-day forecast, we've got wet weather that's mostly coming through in the near term here. This is also coming through in the near term. But this stripe right through here of drier than average conditions is what I'm concerned about. And we just have questions. Is it only in one model? Because you saw that BOM has something similar, but it's not as dry here as this model is. But let me show you another model. This is the forecast through May 6th. From an entirely different modeling suite. It's called the GFS, Global Forecasting System. And it's very similar to the European. Wet, wetter than average, dry. So when I see 2 models kind of lining up with one another, it does give me a little bit more of a sense of maybe we're closer to a forecast looking something like this. So we'll keep an eye on this. We will keep an eye on this as we go forward. Now, you're asking, all right, what is this caused by? Are we lining this up with anything? Is it having anything to do with the Indian Ocean Dipole or La Nina? Well, if you look back over the last 90 days, our La Nina is fading fast. And just recently, in the last week or so, we've seen this, change where a little bit of cooler water showed up here, which is changing the Indian Ocean Dipole, which is now positive. But I can't use the IOD as a strong signal right now. And you certainly can't use La Nina as a strong signal. It's fading very quickly. Look at all the warm water that showed up here. Now, you've probably heard some rumblings that some folks are going to be predicting El Nino conditions by the time we get into the next, 3 to 6 months. And you got to throw the brakes on that in a major way. That talk about El Nino forming, I'm going to make a case for why that should be, a word of caution going forward. But I want to point out to you, if you just look right now, the Indian Ocean Dipole made this big jump up, but do not expect it to stay here. I think it's a temporary blip. I think it comes back into neutral conditions, which is going to take this off the table as one of the forecast metrics I could use to give you a better idea about April, May, and June. This is why I told you at the beginning, we're in low predictability time frame right now. You say, well, is La Nina dead, like dead? Well, this shows that over the next, 15 days, we still have some trade wind activity. That's stronger than normal trade winds. That is La Nina-esque. But I still don't think this is full La Nina. You can't use La Nina to do this because what it's done is it's taken the Southern Oscillation Index positive. That's what those stronger trade winds do. And I would say, all right, well, if the Southern Oscillation Index is positive in April and May, I would tell everybody that this particular spot would be wetter than average, this whole region. But what did you see in the models? They're drier in through here. So history using this fading La Nina as a signal is not showing up. I do think we'll be wetter here, but keeping that wetness down here, man, we would have to have a much, much stronger trade wind signal pushing those easterlies, driving the tropical moisture, right into this area. But I don't fully see it. I just don't fully see it. That's why I come back to this and say we need to be very cautious if we're down here watching the week-by-week forecast to see if any of this tropical moisture does in fact make it down into New South Wales, Victoria, and parts of South Australia. Because right now I don't have good prediction on it. Sure, BOM has it, but I'm looking at these other global models saying, why don't they have it? And you just saw the forecast from the near-term models putting zeros in terms of total moisture in this area going through here. So we need to be cautious about using these historical analogs. So what is going on with El Nino and La Nina? Well, let me show you a couple of things here. This is just a quick look how fast La Nina faded. and now it's bumbling around in neutral conditions. Nearly every model forecast we have is showing, neutral conditions for a while. But I want to show you this particular forecast, okay? What you've got here is the probability of staying neutral in the gray bar. The blue would represent La Nina and El Nino being red. And a lot of folks are going to be calling for, El Nino to return come, June, July, August, all the way through September, October, November. And I'm going to say throw the brakes on that, because you can see that the probability of a double dip La Nina is in the works. And it's a good reminder of history. If you look, this is going back to 1950. I've showed you this a bunch of times. These are the big spikes up representing El Nino events. Do you notice how most of them are single spikes? But for La Ninas, which are the spikes down, they tend to come in pairs. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then we had this one, 1, 2, 3. So where are we right now? Well, this was the big El Nino event of 23-24, and then here was the crash into La Nina for 24-25. It was a weak one, but we don't think it's just going to rebound and go right back up to El Nino right after this. There's not a lot of historical precedence for that. So if it bumbles around here for a while, that could be a key indicator on how we expect May, June, and July to go, INSO-neutral type conditions. So we need to have a look out there and just try to understand what's going on. Because I've been asked, oh, Eric, can you find me a good analog year to this year? And I'm like, sure, we've got 124 years worth of data that I could go out and look at. And none of them right now, based on my current analysis, match. In other words, the situation we're going through with this transition season doesn't clearly find a historical analog that I could go, oh, it's just like insert year here, right? I just don't see it. I have bumbled around with looking at years like 2006. That was one that popped out at me. No, I looked at 2011, 2012. We're worried about these years in the United States based upon this, but I still can't find them to be a stronger analog for all of you. There's some folks like, no, it's 2020. I'm going, wait a minute, really? So we need to just be prepared for a short time period here of very low predictability. So that gets me back to BOM. That's their April forecast. All right, this is their April outlook. And we get into their May outlook. I'm sorry, that's their May outlook I'm showing you here, not April. That's their May outlook. Forgive me, April was this one. We've already seen that. That is the May outlook. And I want to remind you again where our models are for May. So there are significant differences here. Sorry, Eric, let me get this straightened out for you. This is what I've got for most of May. There we are. Forgive me for that. This is their May outlook, drier, and you can see that there is a drier signal here as well. So it's the April timeframe things were a bit off. I apologize for kind of screwing that up for you for a second there. So let's kind of keep this stretched out and look at some other things. Now, April, May, and June, forecast by the long-range models, which I showed you last time, continue to show wetter here with the drier stripe in between. What about the European? The Europeans just, well, maybe you could find a drier region in through here, but it's overall not showing much in terms of usable information, to be honest with you. It's just parking the MJO right in through here. Now, you got to remember something. This was the forecast that was released back on March 1st. So we get a new one of these, but what comes out to us on April 5th. So I'm going to be working hard in my next video to tell you what I think this April, May, June, actually May, June, July time period could look like. Because that's what the current May, June, July looks like from the European model. So my point here is just to share that we are in this near-term, low predictability time frame. And that's why I'm trying to build these additional tools that you can go through and monitor, the near-term weather forecast. Currently, everything I've got is still going to this. So you've got this website. It's just Australia. Whoops, there it is. Australia forecast. It's the original one I made for you. It's just got all the maps all lined up here, and you can look at any of them. But I'm trying to get this organized so it's a much better view and that it works better on your mobile phones. Okay, so I'm getting that. We'll get that to you soon. All right, with all of that, I'm going to give you some international update because I think we need just to see what's going on elsewhere. For us in the United States, we are building an arc because we're expecting right in through here about a foot of rain. Many of you on the listening, our president, Jeff Tarsi. Just so you know, Jeff lives right in through here, and I've been messaging Jeff to say, hey, listen, have you got a plan? Because we are projecting 10 to 12 inches of rainfall along our Ohio River and along the Mississippi. Now, what's this area? We grow a lot of corn, soybeans, cotton, a lot of crops in this area. Some of them have been planted. We do a lot of spring planting, of course, here, which we're in spring almost, we are in spring. And this is going to flood out one of our biggest rivers, the Mississippi, in this area. Meanwhile, back here, this is the most desperately needed rain we've got. We've got to have this rain. In fact, some of this is going to come through as snow into this area. But this is a region that is deep in drought. It's our winter wheat belt. It is an area that we grow some corn, but a lot of cotton, some soybeans, but a lot of sorghum and milo. This is a critical area for getting moisture at this time of year. We're going to have heavy snows that go to our north in Minnesota, but we're way too early to be planting crops here. But this is a major flood threat. Oh, and it's also today under a high risk of severe storms. I wish I could make maps like this for you all. I'll work on that in the coming weeks and months. But what this is this is today's risk of severe storms. And it goes up to, you can see the categories down here. It's a 6 scale number, and it's at the high. This is the highest risk we've got. So Mr. Tarsi is literally right in here, and he's got this major risk of severe weather today. So I know I joked last week about taking some guys out storm chasing. This is a dangerous situation. We will not be out on this today. All right, from here, I want to show you why this is important. We have currently 45% of our land area in what's called D1 to D4 drought. That excludes this color, okay? Last year at this time, we had 20%. So we are quite concerned across the United States about drought moving and developing. Where is it now? It's anchored into Texas. That's why the rainfall in here is so critical. We're flooding in this area, but our northern plains are in drought. Our sun belt, we grow a lot of fruits and vegetables and whatnot down here, is in drought as well. And so there's a lot of concern about what this upcoming growing season could be. So I'm just telling you, right now in the United States, there is a lot of worry about this upcoming growing season, which could really shake up, especially the corn, wheat, soybean, and cotton markets. So thinking this through, I want to show you something. We're expecting a major cold air outbreak happening next 9th and 10th, all the way down into our southeast. It's normally temperatures here up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s Fahrenheit in this region. Now we're expecting the risk of a frost to come in here, which is very, very late and problematic. And here's our other big problem. So NOAA and the National Weather Service has issued this region into here where they're expecting drought to expand. And this is very concerning. This is our most productive region right in through here for corn and soybeans. And if that hits right at the heart of our summer, that's heat and drought on a crop. So I'm going to tell you, is there a chance of this? Yes. What's the current chance? It's at 60%. Now that means there's a 40% chance we're wrong, right? But we're good at being wrong. We're meteorologists. But we're watching this very, very carefully. Now, speaking of drought, in my last video, I told you about some drought area in South America, and it was over here in these states called Bahia. This is called Minas Gerais, Goiás, and Tocantins. That's eastern Brazil's growing areas. We grow a lot of cotton here, and we also grow corn and soybeans, and there's some other crops. That drought took their NDVI values down to the lowest we've seen since year 2000, but some recent rains have brought that back up a little bit. Now, what's interesting about their upcoming forecast is over the next 10 days, we're wetter in through here, but still drier north. But that's only about 10% of their safrinha crop. Mato Grosso is firing on all cylinders. There's good moisture that gets down into southern Brazil. And if you just want me to outline it for you, sorry, that was a bad drawing right there. That is something like 90% of the growing area in Brazil. And they're doing okay. Argentina's sliding into a fall drought, though. Be watching that very carefully. The last thing I'm going to show you is this. It's just an international outlook for the next 10 days. So there's our flooding situation here. Much of Western Europe is drier. You see that China, much of China along the Yangtze River is drier as well. We got to watch that because the longer range forecasts are wet here. The longer range forecasts are dry north of the Black Sea. Near term, not too bad. South America we just talked about, and you can see your forecast of the next 10 days. I'll be honest with you, I've been doing forecast over the entire globe, and the message has been the same. I don't know what's going on right now, and I stare at it every single day. This is a time period of low predictability. I'm hoping that ends pretty soon because I'd like to get some confidence back in predicting where these weather patterns are going to go. But the atmosphere is doing one of its best tricks, which for the northern hemisphere, it is beginning to overturn as spring gets here. In the southern hemisphere, as autumn settles in, it is going back into a much more stable view. And it's just tricky. So, full transparency, just wanted you to know what's going on. I will have much better information for you in a couple of weeks. We'll talk to you then. Thanks.